Hello, peoples. It's time again. We are doing. This is our 13th show. Yay, team! And I want to thank Jacob for hanging out with this crazy person for this many episodes. And I want to thank also our guest tonight, Victor.
Hello.
And Igor.
Hello, everybody.
Which was a last-minute call-in because his buddy hurt himself this weekend and has to go get work done, and that was going to require a trip out of town and all that other fun stuff. So we're all hoping to hear that you're okay, Matt. And so tonight's subject... Oh, and Jacob, sorry, say hi.
I'm here. Hi.
Tonight's subject, we are doing World of Darkness, The Others. We're doing all these other ethnic groups in the World of Darkness that don't get brought up very often. Dark Kingdom of Jade, the Dark Kingdom of Ebony, the Dark Kingdom of Cocaine. Oh, excuse me, Jaguar. I guess that's the Dark Kingdom of Jaguars, South America, yeah?
Probably, I think.
Jacob, do you know? Or Victor?
I've never heard that phrase, so.
Yeah, I've never heard that phrase either.
Huh.
I'm trying to remember. There was, I want to say it's the Dark Kingdom of Obsidian. I think is
That may be it.
It is the American Dark Kingdoms before the Renegades came over and wrecked everything.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I mean there isn't a lot written on that in terms of the modern setting. But yeah.
So that's what we're doing tonight, and hopefully we'll have our viewers. Hey, there's Vanessa. We're gonna have quite a few folks with us tonight, I suspect, for the various reasons. One of the other minor things I would, we'll get on to that here in a bit. Jacob, it's all you, man.
I'm always at the kickoff.
Yes, sir.
Well, I know Igor and Matt have touched base on our werewolf topics with discussing the Rage Across the Amazon and their viewpoints on that. So we'll get to Igor on that subject in a little bit, I'm sure. But I just wanted to let Victor kind of kick off a little bit. When I'd reached out to Victor and asked him if he was interested in being in this and told him kind of the general theme of the episode, he was very excited at the idea. So, Victor, do you want to let us know, so I guess what kind of grabbed your attention or why? Because you said that this was something that you felt was very important to discuss, and you were especially glad that we had somebody from outside United States. I don't count because Canada is close, but
Unity.
anyway.
Yeah.
So I guess what about this topic just kind of grabbed your attention that you were as hyped to be on this show as I was personally to have this topic being presented. So
Yeah, I mean, so I have a lot of friends who are in the science fiction fantasy industry, mostly white.
No, really?
Yeah. And, in a lot of cases, they're persons of color. They're not white, and it's something that I've learned a lot about from them. I went to the Nebula Awards a month and a half ago, I think it was, in Chicago.
Which is awesome.
I was only able to go to one day. It was kind of a friend of mine said, "Hey, I'm going to this thing. Can I crash with you?" I said, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever." And I didn't really think much about what they were going to. It was a conference, whatever. And then like the week before, they said, they told me that I was going to go with them as their guest for the banquet thing. And then the week before, I found out what it was.
Oh,
and
I'd have lost my mind.
And I was like, "Oh, you're going to that?" And I couldn't go to the whole thing at that point. It was too last minute. But I did buy a pass for Saturday. And I was blown away. Like, I went to the awards, and it was just so different from what I'm used to, especially, I don't want to say especially, even in the World of Darkness. I feel like the World of Darkness White Wolf always tried to bring in a variety of voices. Sometimes they succeeded.
Sometimes, yeah.
And other times, I mean, but I love variety of story. I mean, and I'm like this about everything in my life. I like things that are dramatically different. I don't want my point of view all the time.
No, you don't want a completely European theme kind of thing going on. Sometimes you got to throw in some of the Dark Kingdoms, the other Dark Kingdoms.
Yeah, and I mean, and the thing is, I'm a gay male, so I grew up with a little bit of this dynamic of not seeing myself. I'm also a white male, so I only grew up with a little bit of it.
Yeah, but still, that's also something that I don't see represented as well in the game systems in general. Not just White Wolf, but anything. Now, Star Wars The Old Republic did try to add that particular thing to it, but they seemed to be the only company willing to.
BioShock.
BioShock? Okay.
You have it in both Dragon Age and in I'm a terrible geek. How has my mind... There's a sci-fi game. How has my mind gone blank? I was just... Mass Effect.
Mass Effect
series.
yeah.
Okay.
Like, I'm a terrible geek. But, and I think I want stories to be more diverse. I want to hear other points of view, both from a selfish standpoint and because I honestly see stories as the way we understand the world. I know, and I've brought this up in gaming forums before and been ripped on for it actually. But I honestly think, I buy into that old view that like we told stories to understand the world, and role playing is our mythology. Superheroes those are our demigods, those are our myths. And yes, we know they're just stories, but we still engage with them in really powerful ways. And so I think a big part of how the world becomes a better place is we tell these stories in a more robust way. And more importantly, we let a larger number of people tell stories. Like anybody can buy a game and tell a story in their house. But when someone who isn't, 20-something white guy tells a story and it gets published and you hear about it and you see it and people absorb it, then, it breaks down stereotypes. It breaks down prejudice. People see a more robust version of the world. I think that's a good thing.
It makes them less. It makes these topics that you may not be familiar with less scary.
Yeah, absolutely. And it helps build empathy.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you look at old stereotypes about how a lot of different groups were portrayed. I recently, for a Changeling project, I wanted to do a Changeling thing in the Dust Bowl in the Great Depression, and I was chatting with a friend, and he brought up Hollywood during that time, and so I did this whole thing with that, and I looked up Mae West. And I thought, oh, this is great. She was a rebel. She pushed against the establishment. I can use the Hays
Code. Big gay icon for years.
Oh yeah, I mean that. I can do the whole fight between her and the Hays Code, and the Hays Code can represent the Dauntain and the Shadow Court, and their whole nihilistic wrap yourself in the winter to survive it mentality was great. And then I bought a couple Mae West movies and I watched them, and it was great until her black servant showed up on screen.
Yeah,
those scenes were hard to watch, and it's like, we need.
That was more Hollywood than her. I'm gonna be honest.
She wrote those scripts.
Did she?
She wrote those scripts.
Oh, jeez. Okay, yeah. Never mind.
I like Mae West, but I do not put on blinders in terms of where there was shortcoming.
Yes, Samantha, I'll be right there. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't quite that bad, but it was close. And even now it's better now, but it's still there's a level of inauthenticity when it isn't people from these communities writing their characters or informing their characters. And you see the same thing in World of Darkness. And I would just really love to see that change. And I think in World of Darkness, none of it was poorly intentioned, but
It
you
was
know,
lack of resources.
it
Yeah,
yeah.
Martin actually, when he's been talking lately, because I've seen him in a couple of interviews where he's talked specifically about getting people from different
Mhm.
parts of the world involved in the projects.
It's
He
so
himself has said
sad.
that, he's like, you got to remember that the original World of Darkness was written at the dawn of the internet age when research was
Mhm.
difficult.
Yeah.
And so, some of these guys, they might have had a great idea, and then now their deadline's approaching and they haven't gotten through the shitty book that their local library happened to have on
Mhm.
such and such a culture. And that's why a lot of things are, he specifically said that,
Getting
like
black
he's well,
writers.
he himself said that, Kinder of the East, a lot of people like it. Korea hates it.
Oh yeah.
And
Because
well,
they can't relate to it. Like it's totally opposite on anything from their culture, yet their culture is kind of thrown in there haphazardly. So
well, and I mean, I loved Kindred of the East as a high schooler. I go back and look at it now, and I'm like, oh. And I mean, Korea is the perfect example. I remember reading Kindred of the East in high school, and the one thing that bothered me, even as a teenager, is it's like China.
Yeah,
China
that's
is
it.
everything.
It's
China.
all China.
And
maybe a little Japan, but
well, no, I mean, it wasn't even. No, they explicitly say it. It isn't just that they mostly pull from China. Honestly, I think they pull more from Japan than China in terms of what's in the books. But at the beginning of, somewhere at the beginning of Kindred of the East, they say China rules. China is the court. China is in charge. China runs
yeah,
everything.
the Jade
China
Empire.
decides what dharmas are good, what dharmas are bad. China. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Especially like the relationship Japan has with China. That makes, and has always had with China. That makes zero sense.
Yeah.
And then like Korea, Vietnam, the Mongols,
Thailand,
the
Indonesia,
Hong,
any
not
of the
there.
quote unquote Oriental countries. There's a lot of different myths there, and a lot of those myths are not compatible. Period.
Or like what they did with the forbidden dharmas, several of which are Indian. And I'm like,
yeah.
oh, you're going to use the word dharma, and then you're going to
And
make
that is an Indian word. It's a
yeah,
Hindi word.
you're gonna throw it in China, and then you're gonna make the forbidden broken dharmas that you'll never actually be able to escape your damned fate with Indian. That's okay. Let's
Okay,
do this.
Igor.
Yep.
How much of Brazilian culture do you guys write into your werewolf games?
Well, that's a great question you asked. Since, as Victor said, White Wolf has tried to include many cultures in their games, but sometimes they were successful, and sometimes, well, we have something like Rage Across the Amazon, which is like I can't even I don't even know where to begin, Man, like they put one of their characters like Gogol Fangs first, which is like a legendary Ghetto Fenris, but the damn person wears a fucking breastplate in the middle of the Amazon. Like, no, we Brazilians, we don't wear breastplates, all right? And based on this, which is the only source material we got about South America, at least in Werewolf, I don't know about the other settings, but it has nothing to do with neither Brazil nor the other South American countries. The cultures are very different, as in Asia, like India, China, Japan, Korea. We don't even relate to each other. Some cultures,
Yeah, I would
they-
suspect Chilean culture and Brazilian culture aren't even close.
Yeah, like if you go to Peru and compare it with Brazil, well, it's a completely different. We have completely different legends, The people who live there, the native people, they are completely different too. And we at the Garou Nation, our group here in Brazil,
Nação
we
Garou.
are what?
Nação Garou.
Yes, Nação Garou.
Nação Garou.
Yes. When we were doing like a live broadcast once for our podcast, and we came up with the idea with along with our listeners, of creating a Brazilian scenery for werewolf, you know. And we are in an initiative. We are gathering players now. We got application forms from them, and we are running some games now. We're going to run in a few months, I think, about the creation of a cairn here in Brazil. And during this creation of this cairn, we are incorporating some Brazilian native legends, and we are also creating some of our own, you know. But
don't you guys have other werekin like were jaguars and so on?
Yes, I think that Brazil would be a great place for other beasts, you know, because the country itself has a big biodiversity, so it's only natural that we have more beasts than other places. But our focus primarily now is on the werewolf community. But of course, we are also discussing things about the other were races, and we are trying to create our own lore, our own meta plot on the Brazilian history, on the world of darkness. You know.
Oh, cool! You
need
to let White Wolf know. I'm dead
serious. If
Yeah.
there is anyone from White Wolf listening to this, hey man, contact us. We got a lot of ideas.
I will put you in contact with somebody if I have to. But
all right, thanks.
And I mean, the other thing is, you know, there's White Wolf directly. Onyx Path still has probably another year of releasing werewolf books. You know, Vampire is going gangbusters right now, and then it's going to get handed back. And they've said, you know, Werewolf still has some time left for its 20th line. They have submission guidelines. Man, write something up. Send it in. You never know.
Yeah.
I guarantee you they'll throw money at you just to get it done.
Well, man,
I wouldn't say that, Peter. But
well, no, okay, not right away. But what I'm saying is that if you submit something that they really like, yeah, they will throw money at you to say, here, write a book.
Yeah, I really hope that this thing happens. You know, because we're pretty excited. And one thing that made us even more excited about it is the personal input we've got from different players, you know, because every player has created its own character with its own points of view, you know, and it helps on not getting our scenario so biased with our points of view, you know. We get people from every region of Brazil wanting to play, which is very good because I live in the southeast, and to be honest, I know very little of Brazil itself. You know, it's a gigantic country with lots of different subcultures and things, regionalisms, and I think it's going to be very nice to have this input of other players participating in this creation process. You know, makes our histories feel more connected to these people and to each region of the country.
We just had a glitch. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I heard the glitch too, but it was just a second.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, Igor. So something that I ran into, I wanted to use the Korax for something in my mage game, and at the time we were in India, and I was like, okay, so the Korax are written as super hardline, only this one type of Corvid. Let's throw that out. And I looked up what are the Corvids that are native to India. Have you done anything with, you know, especially for the changing breeds that don't have tribes, you know, everyone but the cats and the wolves. Have you done anything with like fleshing out maybe tribes of some of the changing breeds that would make sense in Brazil?
Well, it's one of our members in the Garou Nation. He has always been bothered by the fact that we don't have an amphibian changing breed.
Yeah, the werecroc. I was getting ready to get to that. I was waiting for something like this.
Yeah.
And like Brazil has like several species of of frogs, just to mention the most common amphibian, but we have to make a bigger research, but for now our efforts are mainly focused on werewolves. But there are some native animals to Brazil. Like, we don't have wolves per se here in Brazil. We have a creature that we call the Guará wolf, Lobo Guará.
Yeah, it's the one with the really long legs, right?
Yes, with long legs and black paws, and red fur. But technically, he's not a member of the Lupus genre. So
no, it's closer to the fox, maybe. Or,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's kind of an hybrid, not a hybrid, but it's closer to the fox. You're right. And we have been thinking about something like that, but again, we don't want to, create something out of the way. So we're still making some researches, which is good. Like, I'm a biologist, so I can help in that.
That's awesome.
But
nice.
So far we have focused only on the werewolf, the Garou nation. After we have founded our cairn, after that we might go through other aspects, other relationships and things like that. But we plan on kickstarting our Brazilian scenario with the Garou, and after that we are going to think about the others, one step at a time.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I'm so happy to hear that.
I want to take a real quick second here, say hi to Sabrina, Lexi, and Vanessa. And Vanessa has a specific message for you, Igor. I am so geeking out. That sounds amazing. I would read that cover to cover, bro.
Wow, thanks a lot, Vanessa. It makes us happy to know that fans are getting it. They're really into it. Our Brazilian listeners, they're so pumped up, man. And I gotta tell you, the ideas we are having, they're really, really nice. I hope everybody likes it when we get it done.
Oh yeah, I'll read that.
Yeah, I would read the heck out of that.
It has like our native legends. We're making some researches using our native languages, which are like more than 40 Brazilian languages. Not Portuguese, okay? Portuguese.
And you're talking about the Aboriginal languages from the tribes, yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all the creatures, the lore that we're creating, they involve those languages.
I heard that there actually do have some myths among some of those tribes of were creatures.
Yep, we got lots of them,
Which is kind of strange. I always knew that there were vampire stories in pretty much any culture on the planet. But I'm finding out that there's a lot of were running around out there too. From some of these tribes had not even met anybody until the 20th century. But still, they've got some very similar kinds of myths using the were, not specifically werewolves, but just the shapeshifters.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, but I mean...
We have one here in Brazil. Might I just offer some insight into that? We have one here in Brazil. We have an aquatic mammal. It's a relative to the dolphin. It's called boto here, and our native legends say that these botos they were actually shapeshifters that seduced women and took them under the rivers, underwater to copulate with them. And when a woman she was missing from her tribe for some days and she returned with no memory, they said that she was captured by the boto, and that she was going to get pregnant of another boto. So it's like, this is a strong legend still here in Brazil, still today,
Well, and I mean, talking World of Darkness, that could that myth could also very easily fit into Changeling.
Oh yeah.
There's and a lot. I mean, a lot of those shape-shifting legends. There are varieties of them. A lot of them get seen as Fey legends. Some of them more like werewolves. It just it depends. It kind of varies.
Yeah,
and
some of
Lexi
them
likes
can
your
also
accent,
be.
Igor.
Yeah, I'm reading that.
Oh,
Thanks a
you're
lot.
watching. Okay.
No, but that's fine. Thanks a lot. I don't even know like what kind of accent do I have, but
You have a Portuguese accent, yes?
yeah, that's
A
fine.
U accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, for Changeling, we got like lots of. I have plenty, a lot of ideas for Changeling as well, all based in Brazilian mythology.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and
We've
that's
got we've got our own version of Red Caps,
Really?
Yeah,
which
I
yeah,
love
which,
red caps.
which coincidentally they also wear red caps.
And they make them red the same way?
No, actually,
Okay.
our like red caps, they are like a mixture of red cap and puka because they are pranksters.
Ooh,
Oh,
that's kinda
okay.
cool.
So
Interesting.
Well, and that's
Cute
what I've
red
always
caps.
liked is looking up and researching and reading about all these different mythologies and stuff and incorporating that into games. And I've always done that even outside of World of Darkness, like playing D&D or whatever, is to try to have like different takes on the legends of a creature instead of just taking whatever the book says.
yeah, it keeps the people
So
who've read the
I like
monster manual.
I really like the idea of crossing red caps and puka, though. That is
It's-
fantastic. Like my brain's
Yeah.
going in all sorts of directions right now.
Yeah, and,
Well-
and ours, they only have like one leg.
Oh,
That's
really?
Yeah,
There's a barrage of images. Puka, red cap, one leg. Like I don't even
Yeah,
know what to make
you know-
of that.
Okay,
You know,
yeah, that's
they're-
just
Wonderful.
odd.
they're a really iconic character here in Brazil. They're called sacis, and they
Oh,
they
see, and
they,
that's a Fey name.
they smoke pipes. They have this red cap. They have only one leg, and they put pranks on the travelers on the forests. So
Yeah, that's so Changeling.
that
well,
would make
yeah.
a fabulous kith.
fabulous, Kith. Well, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm really, really happy in Changeling 20th. They're doing, I think it's like 20,000 words on how to create your own Kith. Because I think they know they're never going to get all this stuff. They're never
No.
going to capture it all.
No matter how many
you know,
people
and
they
while-
hire.
Yeah, and I mean, giving people a leg up on taking their local myths and making it part of the game, I would really love to see more of that. If you don't have the money to do the research properly or hire the right people, create a flexible system and invite people into the creation process more. I think, if there's one thing I could change in World of Darkness, just like one thing, it would be every place where the wording was, it only works this way. This place, you can't go here. No, this is excluded. The Koraks are always ravens. No other corvids.
Oh,
Every
whatever.
place. I mean, every place where they framed it that way, and there's a lot of framing like that, I would flip it to, this is the most common in the areas where, we're focusing the story on, but go nuts.
Well, okay. Are there? And like I said, I'm not as familiar, and I'm getting more familiar with werewolf all the time because of you, nice folks. Are there werebear?
Yes, there are
Yes.
the Gural.
Mhm.
Okay. So you've got werebear, you've got were-sharks, you've got pretty much any creature you can think of. Anything
mo-
that,
most
that
of the
has
non-
teeth.
most of the non-wolves, though, are very severely on the endangered species list.
Yeah, and
Well-
that's bull.
Yeah, I mean, War of Rage.
Yeah.
I honestly, like, on the topic of diverse voices in this media, I think the War of Rage is probably the worst thing they ever did
Yeah.
to creating a framework for diverse voices in this media. The War of Rage is a huge part of why Werewolf is the one game out of the 5 I don't play. It frustrates me. Why?
Really?
Why would you do that? Why would you commit genocide against Gaia's other creatures?
Well,
I
well,
get it, you have anger problems, but come on.
Igor's got an
Actually-
answer for that.
Yeah,
If you
actually,
want anger
it's
problems,
because,
Rokia.
actually, it's because the hubris is a very recurrent theme in werewolves games. You know, they are very uh, proud creatures, and they don't accept anyone to tell them what their job is, except for Gaia. And that's why they have such a hard time coming into terms with all the other beasts. And the War of Rage, well, it was like a huge, sad part on the history. But I think that for the plot, as a plot device, it was really nice, because it helps you understand why the Garou are losing the war.
I mean,
Because they are so stubborn that, like, they're losing for themselves, because of themselves. They're so stubborn that they don't accept anything, even if it's the plain truth.
I think Victor's idea is that they're shooting themselves in the foot by doing this.
I mean,
exactly. This is it.
My larger problem isn't that they have those character traits. It's that we're going to tell a global story that sounds more like something that would happen in a nation. I have a hard time, like, when you think about the communication mechanisms of the Garou, there's no special supernatural thing where they all do the same thing at exactly the same time. And the War of Rage took place really early in history, but it happened everywhere. Like, the same genocide happened everywhere, and we're just going to, like, wipe out most of the changing breeds and not talk about all the races that don't have a changing breed now. I just...
Yeah, well,
I've never been okay with that.
I totally get you there, Victor. And then too, like you get situations where, so like Igor himself said, there's no wolves native to Brazil, so we're going to assume that the Garou wiped out most of the changing breeds in Brazil and then left, and just nobody repopulated South America when the Garou went home. Like, I totally get what you're saying.
And things like the werefoxes are only Asian. I understand you wanted to invoke the Kitsune. You should have done that in Changeling, because that's the place for local myths. There are foxes everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here?
Okay. For things like, here, I know this sounds completely stupid, but a werepanda.
I mean, you could do that. I mean, it could be a form of Garal.
The bears I get, but I mean, that's usually, from what I understand now that I'm looking at the wiki, is you get, things like black bears and grizzlies and Kodiaks and shit like that, but that doesn't seem to take into account all the other kinds of bears, and there are quite a few of those native to Asia.
Well, and I mean, the thing is, they did that, so... The first two Changing Breed books, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get this order right. I mean, the first one was Nuisha, and that was coyotes. It was very specific. And then the second one, I think, was Bastet. And with Bastet, they were very expansive. The Bastet have tribes exactly the way the Garou do.
Werecats.
And werecats. And they cover all sorts of different cats. And I don't know if they just decided that Bastet was too much work. I don't know if developing that book was problematic for them. But every book after that... they didn't do that. It's one type. The Koraks are ravens. The Naga are cobras. The Kitsune are Asian foxes. You never see tribes again after Bastet. And that always bothered me. Because it doesn't make any sense. The Nuisha are super specific. Coyotes are, and I'm sure they're, I'm sure there are people out there who'd call me out on this and say, no, there are tons of different types of coyotes, but it's fairly specific. But, like, really, no corvids have changers other than ravens? Like, no other snakes have changers? Why?
Yeah,
because you've got not just cobras, you've got the green mambas and the black mamba, and how many freaking breeds of snakes are there? Seriously?
Yeah,
I mean,
there
are a lot of them.
And to sort of bring that back to the core topic, that's a game design decision that has implications on diverse voices. because you've cut off the opportunity, for someone who's Indian. Say they want to run, I'm running a Sorcerer's Crusade game that ended up in India, and I really wanted to use the Korax. Well, there are no ravens in India. There are tons of Corvids, but there are no ravens. And I went, what, I'm throwing that out. I'm golden ruling that. That's stupid.
Yeah.
And I looked up unique Corvids from India, and I, put together enough of a quick culture for them to make sense in the game. But I had to throw that out. That framing doesn't invite people to imagine what changers are like in the corners of the world where none of what's written in the Farah books exists. And because they've been so restrictive with a lot of them, there are parts of the world where, there are no forest bears. There are only Arctic foxes. There are no cobras, but there are copperheads, and
Yeah.
there would be changers there. Or Australia. Oh, well.
Well, shit, everything in Australia will kill you.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, their were creatures should have been able to easily overpower the Garou.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where kangaroo?
The were-kangaroo will kill everything. Everything will die.
And people think kangaroos are cute. I got news. Those things are nasty, man.
I have watched videos of kangaroos, and I'm like, that's terrifying. That is a cosmic horror right there.
Yeah.
What about were platypus?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. Platypus, platypi are poisonous.
Mhm.
So, well, and along those lines, like we've been talking a lot about the were creatures, but I mean, you can just as easily go through a lot of the different game lines as well. Like vampire, yes, I understand the idea. We have 13 progenitors, we have 13 clans, but why is it that all over the world, when we know that the culture that you're embracing from influences your childer, why do we end up with so many, like, where they're the same descendants? Like a Toreador line from France and a Toreador line from Mexico should have quite a bit of a difference, where one might not even be Toreador anymore. Like, I guess in my
Like
mindset,
what happened with
there should
the,
in my mindset, I guess maybe I know a lot of people don't like the idea of having so many different bloodlines. Let's just keep it to the 13, or
fuck all
some
that.
people like just keep it to the 7. But
No,
I
no.
think on the
No,
on the
fuck that.
other end of things is I think that with this diversity thing, like you can't tell me if a couple Methuselahs went down to Australia, their descendants were going to end up exactly like the ones that settled in Spain.
Well,
Like,
and
there should be, I think there should be more cultural specific. And I know that Requiem went that route, where they did have a lot more culturally localized bloodlines. I know Peter's going to have an aneurysm because I said the R word, but and that's why, like, for myself personally, I like the Ebony Kingdom book for Vampire, because yes, a lot of them you could tell what their relationship was with the 13 clans.
you
Some
mean
of
the
them
Salubri?
very
The Salubri? And the Salubri?
some of them you were like,
You forgot
really
the
trying to
Salubri.
figure out what
Yeah.
they were. So, I think I think that diversity was underappreciated in a lot of the lines. And even with, like, I've seen some conversations online where talking about how with the upgrade or the new addition to Mage, and people are like, well, why did they change the name of some of the traditions? And it's like, why would one tradition be called the same thing every single frickin' place of the world?
Yes,
Well,
exactly.
especially after, and I get a huge kick out of this, that this question came up when the last thing that happened in the major storyline was, the council fell. I mean, because here's the thing: those new names in the book, it's presented as an alternate story, the New Horizon Council. That name change happened after, everything that happened in Revised, and the council fell, and there's a new council. There's a complete reorganization. Anyone who's ever been through a reorg at a job knows that when the new boss comes in, they have to
Uh-huh.
rename everything because now it's theirs.
That's right.
That's
New
why the
disciplines for
traditions
everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that's why the traditions change their names. Let's not kid ourselves. But the point about no, I mean, they're not going to be called the same thing everywhere. The Euthanatos, the Chakravanti, there are two names for two distinct groups of mages that merged together under the traditions, but we stuck with the Euthanatos name. And it's like, oh, and that's not even conjugated properly. So
yeah, but that's Greek. You could, but if you're coming out of Africa, that's not the same name. And
so the other thing a lot of people were pissed about with Mage 20 in Revised, they took all the crafts, all the like little groups of mages that weren't part of the traditions and weren't part of the technocracy and were really meant to be, hey, there are other parts of the world and other cultures and not everybody joined up because a tradition is a political affiliation. It's not just a splat. Like you're not playing a ranger. It represents something in the story. Which I'm amazed how many people struggle with that. But, they just shoved them all into the traditions and Revised. It was part of their make the game simpler and easier to understand thing. And then when they did Mage 20, it was like, nope, we're not doing that. We're not erasing all of this. And people were upset. I mean, I've seen flame wars over this on forums. And
yeah, because some people take shit way too seriously.
Oh, yeah. And it's good that we have completely different groups that represent African cultures and South American cultures. And, ideally, and I know the lead dev for Mage has said this, he's one of the moderators on a Mage group I'm on.
Awesome.
Super with the community. But he said, if they ever get to flesh out the disparates more, he has writers in mind that are from the cultures the disparates represent, and he wants those writers to write those sections.
Yes, because they have a much more inherent feel for those particular mythos.
It's important, and I mean, there was an article from someone who used to work at White Wolf about pay in the industry, and how pay is really, really low right now. Where you're lucky to get 5 cents a word, and unless you really kick out copy-ready word count, like you're just churning it out, that probably puts you right at or even a little below minimum wage, and that's just sitting down and writing. You throw research time in that, if you give a chapter on an African disparate craft to someone who grew up in Kentucky. And you're paying them that, they're not going to research it because they have to put food on the table. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. So there are two things. One, you need to get people who've lived this experience. And two, when that's not possible, we need to value research enough to pay for that time. Like, that has to happen in the industry.
Yes, it does.
And as I mentioned at the outset, I've seen a couple of different interviews where Martin, and even he commented on a conversation I was involved in online in reference to Ebony Kingdoms and whatnot, about how they are seriously, if they're expanding into those areas, they want to hire local talent. They want artists from these regions. They want writers from these regions. And that White Wolf is trying to break away from that USA-centric mindset with the way that they're releasing information, which is, I think is just amazing, especially if they can, get the people, to sit down and do those things, right?
If they're willing to pay them what it's worth, I think they won't have a problem finding them.
Well, it's a competitive industry,
Well, and the other thing that's worth noting, they're interesting in that they're not in the U.S. I mean, the article that I read that talked about pay in the industry, most of the role-playing industry, not all of it, but most of it is in the U.S. and is subject to U.S. pay standards. I mean, pay for everything is too low in the U.S.
Yeah.
They're in, I want to say Sweden. I think they're Sweden. White Wolf
yes, White Wolf is in Stockholm.
So their standards of how they think about compensating people that's going to be very different.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of hope on that front. I'm honestly pretty excited about those dynamics with White Wolf. Change is always
I
kind
also
of scary,
thought that when I heard that they were in Europe, is that we were going to get more diversity out of this. It may be coming later rather than sooner, but we will get more diversity out of it. And if they do go back and redo, say, Kindred of the East, we're going to get stuff from India and Korea and Thailand. And,
well, even let's talk about like just the main things is like somebody summarized Assamites as Muslim ninja assassins, and I know, obviously that's a sensitive term to use, but realistically, you look at how they're presented in the original books. That's exactly what they were thinking when they made them.
Oh, that's what they were in First Ed and even Second Ed. Like
exactly. So and I know with each edition they've been trying to branch out a little bit more with some of these clans. Ravnos takes a big beating for the way they were originally portrayed as well. And I think it would be good even just, from the ground up, let's try to not make cultural stereotypes a specific thing.
Well, by the time the clan wars started, the Sabbat War, there's a section in the Assamite book where Fatim al-Fadid is actually training a Russian. Jesus, there were at least 5 or 6 different nationalities represented in the crew she was training. So they were trying to start adding some more diversity to that clan.
You've always been able to make characters from other nationalities or whatever for whatever clan, but and I'll compare again. So you take a look at the Assamite book, and it talks about Assamites here. Well, it doesn't really do a lot talking about Assamites from different areas, more like what Assamites do in different areas. Whereas you get the Toreador book, you're talking about like it's almost like there's whole different mindsets depending upon where in the world your Toreador is from. Mm-hmm. But Assamites, they're just that's just what they are. They're ninja assassins.
Here's the thing.
Well,
hold on. Here's the thing, is that if they are assassins, to be a good assassin, you have to blend in. And if you're a Middle Eastern in Russia, you're not going to blend in.
Well, okay, so but there's another piece with the Assamites though, and the early books. You're right, that's what they were. Have any of you looked at Lore of the Clans yet?
Not yet. No, I've saw the book.
I haven't had a chance.
Drooling, but that's it.
So I backed that one. And the Assamite. The thing I love about the Assamite chapter is it scraps the "this clan is an assassin clan" thing, and it's not my understanding is that's not where that. It didn't start there. The
concept of Hakim trying to reclaim the blood of Cain.
That wasn't necessarily scrapped, but what that means was scrapped, and the overall, I wouldn't say what it means was scrapped. What it means was made muddy. So they introduced other factions within the Assamites. They split them into the Viziers, the Assassins, and I forget what the third group is. And
the thaumaturges. They're wizards, viziers, and
what was dude's name? The Methuselah that founded that particular
El Shugli.
Order. Yeah,
so,
El Shugli. Yeah.
So I mean, you can still play the really hardcore militant Assamite, and they've browbeaten their way to a level of power in the tradition, in the clan, but it's no longer universally that's what the clan is. It's not even that they don't even make up the majority of Assamites. They hold political power because they're ruthless and they don't really give a shit about the other factions in the clan. But you don't have to play that stereotype to be playing in canon anymore. And I think that was a really big leap for them. So I mean,
it is, yeah.
I mean, removing the clan from being purely Middle Eastern is one thing, but when its roots are Middle Eastern and they're still all assassins, at best you're getting into we're recruiting. I mean, I don't know how much of an improvement that is, but I think going the other route and making it not all about being assassins, that just being one faction, one aspect of the culture, I think is that's a move in the right direction.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
Peter?
Yeah.
Back to you.
Oh. Oh no, we lost Peter. Yeah. I mean, so the other thing the one thing with White Wolf and what they've said about diversity that I'm a little bit nervous about is in their early talks, they said, we're going to move the focus to Europe and the Middle East and Asia. And obviously they've talked about Africa a little bit. For me, I feel like North America has gotten a whole lot of content. Central and South America really hasn't. And I don't know if anyone's, asked Martin about that specifically. But I'd love to see a lot more content on South America as well.
Sorry, it takes me a minute to get the wheelchair back and forth from the bathroom. Sorry.
Okay.
No, I would definitely agree. I think, obviously the Sabat books touch on Mexico, but South America is a huge part of the world that
it's like has not gotten
a lot of love, Igor?
What?
South America has not gotten a lot of love in the
full.
Yeah.
Well, but at least they didn't portray us all as soccer players. So
yeah, right.
That's true.
That's a win,
Oh, jeez.
But yeah, I'm kind of on the same page as you when you talk about the stereotypes that they put on the books. Especially like in the arts of the books. Like there is a picture, an image on the Rage Across the Amazon. I'm sorry for citing this too much, but it's like one of the references I got from Brazil. And they have like a fucking Garou wearing, I don't know, something like a peasant's cap and carrying a machine gun. And I was looking at that and said, and he's in the middle of a forest, the middle of a jungle. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Because, we don't wear peasant caps, and not all of Brazil is a jungle. We've got very big cities, we've got large communities of foreigners as well. So I think that they should put like more grip about those kind of things around here as well. One thing that we have been discussing in the Garou Nation is that some tribes, they don't have any representation here in Brazil, and that would be like a major flaw. Like we have São Paulo, our biggest city. We have a very, very big community of Chinese, Japanese. We've got an entire Oriental neighborhood in this city.
Sort of a Chinatown, quote unquote. And I hate to use that particular term, but that's what most people know it as. Even though you may have Vietnamese living there as opposed to Chinese, but it's always called Chinatown, quote unquote.
Well, it depends on where you are. I mean, like in Chicago, there is Chinatown, and they, all the businesses there use that in their marketing. But we also have a Little Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
Predominantly Vietnamese.
Yeah, because that's where you go to get good food.
Yeah, well, pho is wonderful.
Yeah, and cities in my area have very distinct, separate Chinatown. This is India. This is Vietnam. This is like the communities do stay fairly distinct. But yeah, I could see in some cities it might just be clumped together.
Well, and I mean,
there is room for lots of other ethnic groups here in Brazil as well. We even have like room for silver fangs here in Brazil. We have a royal family until today, So yes, we have a Brazilian royal family. Yeah, they live.
Wait a minute, is there still a monarchy in Portugal?
No,
I'm just curious.
No, it isn't.
Okay,
but we still have those members with like the blue blood and things like that.
Brazil isn't near Portugal, right, Peter?
No, but it's still a Portuguese colony.
Okay, just checking.
And
Well,
therefore, it's like, okay, for instance, Jamaica is still a protectorate of the English Empire, of the UK, which means that their quote-unquote head of state is still the Queen.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Hence the reason I asked if there was still a royal family in Portugal, because you've still got, like I said, it's still a Portuguese colony, quote unquote.
No, it isn't.
Not anymore.
United States is a British colony by that reasoning.
Yeah, but did Brazil do the whole rebellion?
Are you
fighting
wanting to
against
ask
them?
questions you don't know the answer for?
I'm just asking. Listen, South American history was not one of my big things. I knew most of the Roman empires by the time I was 10, Roman emperors before I was 10, because my mother was a history professor. But I didn't learn a lot about South America other than the various colonies that were founded by Spain and Portugal specifically.
Yeah, but Brazil, like, we got our independence a long time ago.
Did you fight for it, or did you just say, fuck it, you guys are out?
Technically, there was no conflict.
Okay.
It was like
we're free. Piss off.
One of the guys said, well, independence or death, and that's it.
Okay.
It became independent.
See, now that's the way you do an independence. The war thing is all passé.
We just wrote England a letter and asked, can we be our own
can we be
now?
free? And England said,
Please.
fuck no. So then
Eventually they said sure.
Yeah, after we kicked the
just-
shit out of them.
I'm not American, dude. We wrote England a letter and said, leave us alone.
Too, by the way, just so you know.
No, it's not a head of state.
She is the head of state.
What do you mean by head of state?
She is still on the money.
Yeah, that doesn't make her head of state.
Which makes her
she's not head of state, though. She's the head of the church. She's not the head of state.
Are you saying that Ben Franklin is the head of state for the United States because his face is on money?
We don't do royalty here. That's the thing.
Are you sure?
Trump's trying to bring it back, but that's neither here nor there. I'm just saying is that there are a lot of former colonies that still, Australia and Canada being two of the most prevalent, that are technically still part of the UK, but not really, kind of thing. And even though they're not part of the UK, technically, the head of state still is the Queen. She's the protector of the empire. Her whole list of flippin' titles.
I think the head of state is still generally considered the prime minister in those countries. I think if you asked anyone from any of those countries,
that's the okay. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right. I think we're having an issue with translation here. Because I'm just okay. Let's moving on. We've covered a lot of South America. We haven't covered a lot of Africa tonight, and we've covered quite a bit of Asia here and there. Mm-hmm. Okay, what do you know about a lot of the mythos from Africa? And there are just as many bloody myths in Africa as there are in South America. I would think, maybe more.
Well, there would be more. Africa's the largest continent. Like that's what a lot of people misunderstand
because of the way the maps are done.
Yeah, Africa, like, to refer to Africa is like, I mean, we talk about how messed up it is referring to trying to see Kindred of the East through the eyes of just China. And telling everybody else that they basically just have to do what China wants to do, kind of a thing. It's the same level of ridiculously to try to treat Africa as a single entity. Like there's so many countries, so many countries, so many cultures. I mean, Egypt and Ghana and South Africa are three very different countries with very different cultures historically and currently. And
I bet the Maasai have some really cool myths.
They do. And so, and I guess what I would really suggest to anybody, whether they're, trying to play in South America or Africa or Asia or even Europe, is do some research. Like the internet can help so much, where like if you're going to try to portray a character from a certain area or to put a setting in a spot that isn't near you, then look up and see what it is about. Like I'm running a game set in Kyoto. I have bookmarked on my laptop. I've got maps of Kyoto. I've got history of Kyoto, notable places in Kyoto. I share news articles with my players on things in Japan, not like the, Japan kind of joke things, but actual factual stuff that we can incorporate into our game to make it more proper, more appropriate.
I think the game's more interesting that way.
Well, exactly. Well, and same with Africa too, or like Igor lives in Brazil, and he himself says that they get other people to give them feedback because Brazil's a pretty big country too, with a lot of different cultures.
If I had to run a chronicle set in Salvador, maybe Bahia, like it's close to my state, but I know nothing about it.
Yeah, you know diddly, right? So you would have to do some serious research like Jacob has done with Kyoto. And that's just one city in Japan. I mean...
Yeah, well, and I mean, the other thing that I think is really important is having players who will be prepared for you to really change things up, because a lot of the White Wolf canon has some stuff in it that you might do research on the area and be like, whoa,
where the fuck did you come up with that? Yeah.
Well, like as a perfect example, I set, my Sorcerer's Crusade game. It's set in 1501, and I wanted to look up some people I wanted to have a Celestial Master, and I'm like, okay, who are Celestial Master names that I can pull in as long, faraway NPCs and use. And I looked it up. The game was set in Venice, and there were none. There was nobody. Galileo wasn't for ages. No. Tycho Brahe, who in the canon renames himself to Tychodes, maybe he did, maybe he didn't, maybe it's someone else, but that's the hook. He's like 8 at the time period the game is set. I'm like, well, he hasn't published shit.
Yeah, right.
So who has done astrology at this point in time?
That's just prior to the Renaissance. I mean, like 200 years prior to the Renaissance. But there wasn't, other than the state wars, but there wasn't really anything going on.
Well, but there was. I mean, there really, really was. And you are still in the Renaissance for certain parts of, especially Italy. And especially Venice. Like you're already soundly in some of that, but just not astronomy. And so I looked up, and what I discovered was there's a school in southern India, the Kerala School of Astronomy and Mathematics, and they had basically come out with full publications in Sanskrit of all the theories that Tycho Brahe was gonna, spit out in 15 years.
Yeah,
they were finalized and done. Like they were decades ahead of Europe. But if you read about the technocracy, you read about the Daedalans, the Order of Reason, no, there's no mention of anything coming from India.
Yeah,
I mean, India is a void. And whereas India is where all of the activity on that front was happening. And the reason is back to that funding thing that I was saying earlier. People were putting these books together. I happen to know Sorcerer's Crusade in particular. Phil, who was the lead dev, literally all of his writers quit at the last second, and he wrote the whole book himself. It's in those confines, it's a brilliant book, but seriously, I'm sure he didn't have 30 seconds more to rub together for any more research than he already did. And that's just the truth of the matter. But if you do that research on an area and you find something like that, and you really want to be true to the area, you got to be ready to use the golden rule very liberally and be playing with players who are going to be okay with that. Because, man, it's published at the front of every book, but White Wolf still has rules lawyers and canon lawyers.
Yeah. Well, okay, I came across, speaking of which, stuff that pops up way before history says it did. Like most recently, they came across some stuff in China that shows that a lot of the astrological stuff that we took for granted was actually mapped in 1500 BCE by a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it took us almost 2,000 years for the Western civilization to come up with the same stuff.
Don't look at Babylonian history, then, bud. You'll be even more surprised.
Yes.
I mean,
so you've got. Well, go ahead, Victor.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just gonna throw in about, like, perfect example. People talk about the Dark Ages. Well, the Dark Ages was a big old recession in Europe, but man,
the rest of the world was ticking along just fine.
Yeah, they really were. I mean, look at the math and science that came out of the Middle East during that period.
Yeah.
And I think Europe would be much better off if it hadn't been the Great Burning, That would that destroyed a lot of stuff that could have very well put us 100 years further along the technological path that we are on, if the church hadn't have been just stupid.
Well, there is that.
And so we find that there is a lot of stuff there that, granted, there's just no way in hell they're ever going to get it all into the books because there is so much. But there's no reason why they can't use at least some of it.
Well, so here's an interesting idea I had earlier when we were talking about, Brazil. Back in the old White Wolf days, they Brazil, and specifically the project that Igor and his friends are doing and building that lore. Back in the old White Wolf days, they licensed out a couple books, foreign language books. One in France that was Changeling, I think, and then another one in Germany that was Broad World of Darkness. And White Wolf did not produce them. And all of the Changeling content from those books, as a stretch goal, got pulled into Changeling 20th. We keep talking about, they couldn't do all this. They can't write everything. But, what I would almost love to see more than White Wolf trying to manually hire enough people to do everything. They've talked about, we're a licensing company now. We're a licensing company.
Yeah.
I would really love to see them be like, we're going to make Vampire 4th or 5th or whatever number they go with. We're going to do the core line. And then for the parts of the world that,
we're not familiar
outside
with,
of our scope, we're going to license with a company there, the way we've licensed with Onyx Path, to produce city books for those local cities. And, and yes, all the writers can come from there. And maybe those books don't have to all be in English. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'd really love to see
awesome. That would be really awesome,
Well, I mean, yeah, and what you and Matt are translating a lot of the English stuff for Werewolf into Portuguese, aren't you?
Yeah. Specifically the things that are not being released here in Brazil, which is pretty much almost everything.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Jake was talking about, I think. Or Victor, sorry. Or was it Jake?
I think we both touched on it.
Okay. So, yeah, start licensing this stuff out to folks like Igor and Matt, saying, go ahead. You can use the logo. You can use the, don't screw up. Don't fuck up canon. But go to town.
And I mean, they're gonna have a whole, like, they have a lead storyteller. They're gonna be used to that relationship because of the video games and everything else they're doing. But yeah, Igor, you were gonna say something.
No. Continue. Go on.
Well, that was just really my point. Is that they're setting themselves up as a licensing company. They have a head storyteller. Martin's main role. The first job they posted after Martin and their CEO was basically a coordinator with licensees, an editor.
Okay.
someone who would coordinate between, the Onyx Paths and the By Night Studios and the video game companies, and they said they want something on Netflix and, whatever they license to, coordinate with the lead storyteller so that all of that is canon. If they have that, if they're going to have people where that's their job, man, throw the net as wide as you can.
Oh, yeah.
Start turning out books like there's no tomorrow. What does anybody know what Danny's official title is? Now that she started working for White Wolf?
I don't.
Yeah, neither.
Because I know
wasn't that the manager job that they had advertised that they were receiving applications for? Because she got hired shortly after that.
Because I know she was translating stuff into Spanish. I think
that's awesome.
Kind of like what Igor and Matt are doing. And then they just kind of said, hey, you want to come work for us and do the same thing? Or I don't know. I have no idea because she hasn't really been very forthcoming, at least as far as her posts, as to what her official job title is. Although, I've noticed on the White Wolf page, she's in the banner now.
Well, yeah, because she's part of the team.
Yeah, but I mean, she's in that banner at the top of the page with all the different kindred.
Yeah.
And I was like, she looks kindred.
Well,
she looks Tory. She looks Tory.
They've used her.
Go ahead.
They've used her a couple of times for different books and stuff. Like she's in a lot of the artwork already.
She was working for the with the LARP stuff, yeah.
Well, she's isn't she the she's been a Toreador in at least one of the publications, and I've seen her on a cover of another one.
She looks
and you're right. There actually were fairly vague. I just scrolled down to the tweet when they announced it. Yep. That all they said is that she joined the team.
That's it.
So
That's
they
all
didn't
we
have
know.
Anything specific. So.
And I'm afraid to ask her because she's going to tell me no, she can't tell me.
Well, I mean, if you won't know less than if you didn't ask.
True, but
yeah.
I don't want to act like I'm trying to get information I shouldn't have.
But you
then
are.
They get all bent out of shape. Well, see, no, that's not information I shouldn't have. I mean,
then
come on,
don't
a job
worry about
title is not that big of a deal, but
then don't
unless
worry about
it's a big deal.
Well, but so if you're not trying to get information you shouldn't have, then you don't have to act like you're trying to get information you shouldn't have because you're not trying to get information you shouldn't have. So it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just ask.
And if it were information you shouldn't have, she should simply say no.
I'm in a mood. I'm in a mood tonight, Peter. I'm like all up in your face.
Yes, you are, and that's fine.
Usually I just sit here and I'm quiet and let the guests harass you.
Whatever.
I'm like
You
all wound
people
up or something, I guess.
Can't trust nobody.
We are all out to get you. It is World of Darkness. Everything's a
That's
conspiracy.
right. The jihad continues.
Trust no one.
Trust no one, especially those fucking lupines.
So
Hey, come on, man. We're trusty.
So
Just don't trust Matt because he's a fucking Shadow Lord. That's it.
Right. I didn't know that. Oh, see, that's the first time that's come up.
Yeah. He's a Shadow Lord, so never trust him.
Okay, I got something to screw with him about next time.
so I'm curious. So I'm curious about something. Like we've talked a lot about maybe our least favorite outside of like central white U.S. European angle that White Wolf took. Do you guys, are there any examples you know of where you're like, yes, that's better, that's closer, that's, what I want to see that White Wolf or Onyx Path has done? We've done a lot of ripping. I figured we could be positive.
Okay, well, I'll say, because I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but I did, and I know there's a lot of people who, there's nothing's perfect. I do think that they did a little bit more research with Ebony Kingdom than they did in some of the previous edition books. It was one of the later books before they went all Gehenna on everything.
Yeah.
and even in the book itself, they basically said Africa is a huge motherfucking continent. There's no way we're going to do anything justice in a book this size. So here is what this is what we have found. Here are some resources we encourage you to look into. So then when you narrow your focus down to do the extra research. So I have played recently some characters from Africa where I have looked in the Ebony Kingdom book and have done some additional research to supplement that. And I've actually been impressed with how they actually were able, like when they did the different bloodlines for Africa, they actually went to specific cultures in Africa and looked up their specific legends and myths and incorporated that into the concept of the bloodline. And I think that was nice to see. To your point earlier, Victor, you're going to use the word dharma, but you're not going to allow, Indian culture. I totally get you there. I usually just close my eyes and keep reading.
That's right.
But anyway, but
that's a trick right there. Closing your eyes and keeping reading. You have to tell me how you do that someday.
It was nice to see. It was nice to see them go that extra step to actually incorporate those ideas and stuff. So I'd say that would be, from my experience, where I've seen that they have done some justice to something that is not standardized USA.
Well, and it's funny because that's one of the vampire books I don't have that I really want to have. I have a friend of mine who owns it, and I've tried to dig it up before, and it's always so ridiculously expensive. And I've been burned by buying print-on-demand copies of the old books. Not all his files are great. So yeah, that's I wish they'd maybe use the salubri a little less in that book, but aside from that, yeah, from what I saw,
it only really showed
good.
Up in like a page and a half. That's about all.
Like 3 or 4 of the bloodlines are salubri sub-bloodlines.
No, they're not. No.
Yeah, there were a bunch of them.
No,
a couple. Yeah, in Kindred of the Ebony Kingdom.
Yeah, it is not. Salubri is just they're in the appendix, and it's like just a page and a half, and that's it.
No, I know there were at least 2 or 3 bloodlines that are derivatives.
All I'm going to say, it is a book that I read semi-regularly. I cannot recall seeing or mention anywhere else. So, yeah.
Okay.
So that's all I can say about it.
Okay.
But just from my reading it, the salubri only show up in the appendix and a page and a half description of some that managed to hide down there, and that was basically it.
Okay.
I
mean, it's been a while since I looked at it. I remember that jumping out at me. Yeah, I remember reading a couple of the bloodlines and it jumping out at me, but it might not be as prominent as I'm remembering it.
How many sub bloodlines are there for the Nosferatu? You've got the Samiti, are one.
The Samdi are a derivative of Cappadocians.
Not Nosferatu.
I thought they were Nos.
Yeah. No, they're Cappadocians.
They're Cappadocian.
Huh.
Yeah, they're seated at the end of the Cappadocian clan book, the first edition Dark Ages Cappadocian clan book. There's a page about how some Cappadocians are starting to, instead of just having the pallor, they're starting to actually rot.
Yeah.
And it's basically describing the Samdi, describing the birth of that bloodline.
And in BNS, to be a Samdi, you have to be able to select Cappadocian and then pay for the bloodline merit.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I figured with the hideousness kind of thing, that would be more of a Nos thing. But okay, that works. Because of the death, what is their clan discipline?
Thanatosis, which is kind of
thinking of zombies and shit.
Yeah, which is in a lot of ways really close to what Mortis was when it first came out.
Yes.
Before they all got folded into necromancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any Cappadocians left?
The
Yes.
Harbingers of Skulls are technically
Harbingers of
Cappadocians.
Skulls and Samdi, and the what are they called? They actually had a small bloodline in the appendix of Ebony Kingdom as well.
Okay, some more.
Which
So it
would-
looks like
would make
Africa
sense,
kind
yeah.
of harbored a lot of.
Yeah,
the,
because that would have been the bloodlines that the Setites smuggled out of Europe. Because that was the storyline in the Dark Ages too, and in the Giovanni Chronicles. Because one of Cappadocius's childer were his friends with the Setites, and it was basically the Setites had like an underground railroad
the
kind of set
Setites
up.
have no friends.
Well,
What the hell?
sorry,
They have clients.
positive, yeah, clients. Whatever.
Actually,
You're
I've
a
been
you're a
considering.
Tremere. What would you know about friendship anyway?
Yeah, right. Exactly. We have no friends either. That's. But no, I've been considering, kind of giving up on the whole Tremere thing for a while, at least. And one of the clans I've been considering is Setite, and the other one is Assamite, of course, because I really like the Assamites in general. The concept. Even though they're, like diametrically opposed to the Tremere in almost every way possible. Really.
Not as much as you would think.
That's the thing I'm finding out. Is that they're not really as, far apart as, speaking of which. But that was one of the things I was going to bring up about, the diversity thing was it seems like that was them and the Setites were about the only really culturally diverse clans. Now, granted, the Tremere would take pretty much anybody as long as they had some skill that the pyramid could use. But as far as clan, racially speaking, Setites and Assamites were a bit more culturally diverse than the rest of the clans. They seem
By
to
culturally diverse, do you mean they are a non-American culture? Because I think
Yeah.
those clans are usually viewed as being less diverse because they don't embrace
But
from.
no, what
various
I mean, that's what
Uh,
I mean was that they are
Okay.
not European centric kind of.
Oh, okay.
You know,
I
There
really
is a-
liked when they decided to make Ravnos Indian instead of just gypsies.
yeah, I
Well,
thought that was the way they
I thought
always
that was
were.
really good.
I mean, I
There's
had
a South American bloodline of the Setites, do you know?
Yes,
No.
yes, yeah, there
I
is.
like those. They have
Yeah.
Protean instead of
Plastique,
Serpentis.
something like that.
Protean instead of Serpentis? No shit.
Yes.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, look at the first 5 levels of Protean and Serpentis. They're mirrors of each other. Like they clearly got to Serpentis and went, let's just copy Protean. Giant wolf, giant snake, claws that do ag
Yeah.
damage, long forked tongue that does ag damage. My
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
But
Dark,
but
like,
these
in the
versions,
dark or
but their
they're-
version of Protean, I think they turned themselves into jaguars. I think.
Oh, okay. So that would that even fool one of the were jaguars or
No.
No,
I didn't
no.
think so.
No, probably not, because
Yeah.
no gangrel can fool
Guy-
a Garou. So
Yeah.
No,
Gaia-
but
Gaia's
the
children
Gangrel,
aren't that dumb.
the Gangrel actually have a much better standing with the Garou than any of the other clans, the Worm Tainted.
No.
Slightly
That's
better.
that's the myth that the Gangrel want you to believe so that you keep them around.
I mean, they
Yeah.
built they
Like-
built
they're like
a mechanic
shoot on
for
sight,
that.
the same way, you know.
Yeah, they built a mechanic for that actually at one point where the Gangrel, like, if you were on Path of the Beast, like you weren't. If you're on Humanity, if you go below like 8 Humanity, you start to be Wyrm Taint, and you could fall lower on Path of the Beast before you became Wyrm Taint. But that was also all old weird second ed rules. And
Oh,
they
okay,
may have
gotcha.
dropped them.
Just you wait for a Ghetto Fenris know that there is a gangrel in his vicinity.
Yeah.
You'll see what he does.
Oh yeah, that would probably go over like a lead balloon.
Yeah, it's true.
So okay, let's go back to the Asians again for a bit. So we've got we need more Indian stuff. We definitely need more Korean stuff. Specifically Korean. What mythos there would be a good addition to either the Kindred, the Garou, or even the Kindred of the East?
I mean, I don't know. I think that's tricky. I mean, especially with the way they set up Kindred of the East. I think what I think they kind of need to do is they kind of need to take Kindred of the East and keep some of the mechanics, but basically scrap the culture. They kind of need to redo it. They need to redo it from the ground up.
Yeah, that's
and
what I
say, and you could have it be the Kweijin, but have the Kweijin in Korea think of themselves differently. Have them have formed their own court and their own culture.
Completely different dharma, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe. I mean, if you look at Korea and you look at Japan, I took a Japanese history course, a medieval Japanese history course in college, and it talked about the fact that basically all the major artifacts of Japanese culture came from China through Korea. And they transformed along the way. So you wouldn't even necessarily have to have a totally different dharma, but, get someone who's Korean to talk about that cultural relationship and bring them in on a team and have someone who's focusing on, the Chinese court and say, well, okay, what is your relationship with China like culturally? Like, what's your experience of that? And instead of focusing on like what would be good for the game, unique, true human stories would be good for the game, and say, well, what sort of story would you want to tell that this framework would facilitate you telling?
I am Chun, master of Senanju.
Well, and what's interesting is that Korea actually doesn't have any vampire mythology of its own.
No, it doesn't.
Everything from that has arrived is as actually they've imported more mythology of vampires from the West than from China and Japan. So it would be interesting at the idea of having like the Korean court. They've been hanging out with, the rest of the Wanxian all this time, but they're actually Cainites. They just stick to themselves. They talk with the other guys. Whatever their paths of enlightenment are similar enough that, their neighbors have no idea that they are different creatures.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So, and then incorporate some of actual Korean culture into the way that they manage their court, or things like that.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
As an idea, let's think out of the box, right?
And then here's one of the other things I was considering was like kindred from India, like a bloodline that would have multiple arms. Kind of like the Salubri have multiple eyes. Since multiple arms seem to be a big thing in the Indian mythos.
Well, I mean, I think you would run into problems there in that Shiva doesn't just walk around town looking like Shiva.
No, they can hide their nature, but Shiva's not the only one with multiple arms.
Well, I mean, no, but I think I actually posted something. Oh, go ahead.
Kindred of the East has a discipline that gives you multiple arms if that is of your choice.
Oh, really?
So
they did try and add a little.
Their demon form they have.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think talking about some of those myths, because the other thing is, it's easy to start with a game and then look for a myth. I think it almost would be nice if we could reverse it and have some people, who really know the culture and say, all right, here's our whole world. What myths would you pair with what games? I was recently, there was, I don't know if any of you have ever listened to the Ultra Culture podcast.
Uh-uh.
It's I don't want to say paganism. Some of it's paganism, occult, spirituality from different cultures. And one of the episodes had an individual and they talked a lot about Hinduism. And he's like half Scottish, half Indian. But they talked about a concept where everyone in India, everyone who's Hindu anyway, part of Hinduism is everyone believes they are divine. And,
Yeah, that's the whole walking the path to,
and
nirvana.
well, but specifically the gods manifest in people when it's necessary. So, when something horrible happens and, a handful of people really kind of grow up very quickly to deal with it, which happens to people, to humans. Part of their view is, oh, this god has manifested in this person because they need to come down and deal with this and deal with this situation. Their gods are more involved than we tend to think of in the West.
Yeah, I know, like, okay, the legend of Vishnu and Brahma and Shiva. That whole interaction between those gods, and then you've got all the lesser gods like what's the Ganesha, and there's a lot of really good stories there.
There is, but the thing that it got me thinking about is in Changeling, the Fae are often viewed as the gods of the various cultures. Like if you look at Celtic mythology, they were gods. The Fae were gods and tricksters. They were worshipped. They were feared, but they were worshipped as nature entities. And generally that's a theme. You see it with the Hessian. The theme in Changeling is you are fallen gods, sort of animist-ish gods. That's where they pull from. So then, what does it mean to be a changeling in a culture where everyone believes divinity lives within them? Like, Changeling has such a strong theme of, like, you have this divine thing in you, but it's also alien, and you're in a culture that intrinsically rejects your belief in that. So then I would love to see a book that doesn't do the kind of generic Orientalist thing of, like, oh, well, people in Asia believe in supernaturals, but, like, really take that cultural concept and dive into it with Changeling and have, people that know a lot about Hinduism tell a story about the Hindu gurus and about the process of engaging with them and, what it's like being a changeling where the people around you believe that. And what does that look like? And what roles do the myths play if they play a role at all? And it runs totally counter to the rest of the world of darkness. But, maybe there are advantages to having ignored India as much as they did during the period where they didn't have the money for research. Because how amazing would that be?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I like a lot of the festivals that go along with the Indian gods. The Festival of Colors that they do. And then that one festival, I forget which town it's in, but all of the priests of Shiva come in and just get high as freaking balls for like a week, and all the people who are coming to celebrate and to get a little piece of the divine, and their way of doing that is giving pot to these priests and getting their blessing. And I'm like, wow, that's a completely different mindset than most of the religions I can think of offhand. Most religions, East or Western religions, have to do with
not getting high.
Yes, the ascetic virtues, doing without. Whereas a lot of the Eastern religions is more of celebrating what you have and getting more of that.
Well, I mean, and it's, but yes, but it can be different even from just that. So, like, the Kama Sutra came up at my last mage game.
Yeah, see, talk about getting more of that.
Well, no. The thing is, that's not really what the Kama Sutra is about. No. I mean, the Kama Sutra was, there is a sense of asceticism. There is the sense that all of these things in your life distract you from enlightenment, but the monastic, I'm going to remove myself from the world aspect, and they talked about this a lot in that Ultra Culture episode I just mentioned. Okay. There aren't a ton of people that totally remove themselves from the world in Hinduism. It's like, I've reached enlightenment, I'm a guru, I'm going to help other people reach enlightenment. Oh, and I have a wife and kids.
Yeah.
And I need to maintain my enlightenment. I need to not be distracted by all these things in the world. I still need to be a good husband, and I still need to engage with my children in a human way and not as, a perfect egoless conduit from the divine. And so the Kama Sutra is about how do you engage in sex? How do you have a sexual relationship while not totally being lost to it? It's about maintaining your enlightenment while still engaging in.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say was you can maintain your divinity while still being immersed in as much of this as possible.
Yeah. It's just I know a lot of people who go, "Oh, so the sex is divine." It's like, no, the sex is still a distraction. It's how do you continue to have it?
Exactly. And Lexi says, "Yeah, now that's a party." I'm right there with you, sweetheart. But yeah. See, this is the kind of stuff that they need to be writing books on.
But again, it goes back to resources. Because just as an example, I'm sure I messed up some of that description of the Kama Sutra because I'm not Hindu.
Yeah.
And so
you didn't grow up. That way. So you don't know a lot of the little ins and outs of and I hate to use that phrase, but
the nooks and crannies, the details, the framings, and so what do you do if you want to try and tackle a culture where there isn't a strong gaming background? What if you want to tell stories or have stories told in a part of the world where almost no one knows about White Wolf?
Exactly. Like China. I'm pretty sure China has zero idea.
I don't know.
All I can say on this subject is I do have one person who is part of my Kyoto group who lives in China. He hasn't played with us yet. He hasn't played with us yet, but he is interested in trying it. How
is he getting around the Great Firewall?
Oh, there are ways around the Great Firewall.
I know there are, but for that kind of thing, if you get caught doing that shit in China... See, there's a show on YouTube I watch. It's called China Uncensored, which it talks about exactly what really is going on.
Well...
And hold up. I gotta silence this. Sorry.
Take on.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my ringtone. Go figure.
Well, I read an article recently about the Great Firewall, and basically, if you're at a certain strata of Chinese society, they sort of look the other way. They don't so much care about
as long as you're not
individuals.
Talking shit about the CCP, you're okay.
Yeah, well, or giving lots of other people access. Like if you were to get a VPN and then set up a wireless hotspot and tell everyone in town, hey, come on in. Oh, they would shut that down. But, there's a certain amount of give and take that they allow because the people who would be really pissed off about it don't have to worry about it. Exactly. It's, so...
But there are things like, are you familiar with Falun Gong or Falun Dafa?
I'm not, no.
Okay, it's like Tai Chi, but there's a much more spiritual aspect to it. And at one point, there was over 2.5 million people who were practicing Falun Gong in China. And the CCP said, holy shit, 2.5 million people doing the same thing. We can't have that. So they started arresting these people and putting them in these labor camps. And not just that. These people, of course, are practicing a really good way to keep oneself healthy. So they started farming these people for organs. Okay? And that's the kind of stuff that really scares the shit out of me about China in general. Am I still coming through?
Yeah, we're just listening to your tangent.
Yeah, so no, but that's the thing is that there in China you still have when Mao was still alive, they had what was called the Cultural Revolution, which was wiping out almost every aspect of spirituality that had been fostered in that particular country for the past 5,000 years. So how do you reconcile the new China with the old China and still, and like I said, I hate to keep going back to Kinzer to the East, but even using the Canaanites or the changelings or the Garou in that particular environment. How do you not have the CCP hunting you down because you are part of the old order?
Well, I think there are cultural stories that can be told, and there's that also gets into the question of how political do you want the game to become. Yeah. There are a lot of debates and arguments about
vampire politics is everything.
Well, okay, there's vampire politics and there's commentary on the real world.
Yeah.
So
the real world has a direct impact on all of the games.
It does, but so as an example, when Martin gave his big was it Tenebrae Nocturne talk, and he brought up 9/11 and that White Wolf bypassed talking a lot about 9/11. They did address it more than he indicated
as part of the Week of Nightmares, kind of.
Yeah, but it wasn't something that they dived into the way they dived into the concentration camps in the Shoah book. So
there's the Jewish stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing you get into is do you really want to tell a story because if you get into all the stuff that's going on with the Chinese government, how much of what's coming out of China is real, how much of it is propaganda, how much of it is hyped up by
urban legend,
people who are hyping things because they want to try and tear down the Chinese government. That's such a hot political, situation that on one hand, if you wanted to tell, say, a technocracy political game, though it's all about control, maybe it would be ripe content for a table with people that have context to tell that story. Do you really want to publish books that get into it? Is there benefit there?
Yeah, you could really throw a big downer into the whole thing.
I lean towards the assumption that every choice is political. Even trying to expunge every word of politics from your game is in and of itself a political stance. But there is definitely a point where you're does addressing this improve the game?
Well, and that's a valid point. And as well, too, if you're wanting to get that detailed when you start publishing, you risk alienating your audience if you start actually getting that politicized. Every gamer is left with
hello
kind of thing. I know quite a few guys who are a lot more conservative than I would have imagined as role players. So if you're starting to include that level of political commentary into your books, you're going to end up treading on sensitive issues in some people's mindset, and they won't know exactly how to handle, or they'll make a bigger deal out of it than it needs to be. Well, so to Victor's point, is it going to improve the game to list it in a published material and have, this is how this is how the Sabbat responded to 9/11. This is how the Camarilla responded to 9/11. This is how the Assamites responded to the war in Afghanistan. Is that going to enrich the game, or is it we'll make mention of the fact that 9/11 happened and let the storytellers that are telling your game, let you guys as players and storytellers decide how much you want to really focus on that area.
Yeah. And there's also, to go back to the specific dynamic with China, White Wolf has said we want a show on Netflix. We want, they have big licensing visions.
Oh yeah.
If they dive in and start making statements about the Chinese government, then
it's never going to be shown in China.
Exactly. I mean, it's one thing to make a statement about, the American government. Like, that's protected. Or, other governments that have, broad democratic open discourse, most of the Western world. It's that's one thing, and I'm all about including that stuff in the game. But they're business realities related to being an international company. So,
Well, okay. For instance, in the new Marvel movie, for Doctor Strange, they had to use Tilda Swinton.
Sorry, what was that phrase you used?
It is a Marvel movie.
You said they had to use Tilda Swinton?
Yes.
I don't know that they had.
No. You got to read the article. You got to read the article. The reason they used Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One, being a Tibetan, they could not get the movie shown in China at all if they used a Tibetan as, for that particular character, because how touchy they are about Tibet.
I think that's a reason they gave. There were many options for maybe avoiding the Tibetan conflict with China without jumping all the way to Tilda Swinton.
Maybe they could have had Lucy Liu or Bai Ling and set the Ancient One as being Chinese instead of Tibetan, or Japanese instead of Tibetan,
or
Korean,
there are
or
so many options.
Yeah, but the reason the Marvel studio gave in that article was the only way they could get the movie shown in China was not using an Asian period.
I think that was a PR department managing their press.
All right. Well, no, that's also a very valid concept. And like I said, maybe the show I was talking about colors the way I think about things a bit more than some others did. When I read that article, I was like, that makes a hell of a lot of sense, knowing what I know about the CCP. And I'm not talking about the gaming company, by the way. I'm not talking about those people are freaking Icelandic.
Yeah, well, CCP, I mean, that's a whole different loaded topic in the White Wolf community.
Right. There were a lot of people very angry when they pulled the plug.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the stories that came out after the fact about how poorly that development was managed.
Yeah, it was because
I don't think
putting too much time and money into Eve and Dust 514, which still hasn't come out. You guys are familiar with what was going on with that, right? But that's something else entirely. Let's move on. All right. We've covered Asia, we've covered Africa, we've covered South America. What about some of the more indigenous tribes of, say, North America? Now, I know they cover a lot of that in the Garou stuff. But as far as vampires concerned, there's very little there.
Well, it depends on the game. So, I mean, there's Garou. There's not a lot for vampire. There's a ton for changeling. They're, the largest group of non-European fae are the Nuheni, I believe is how it's pronounced. So there's Nunahi. Yeah, you're right. So there's a lot there.
That's Inuit, yeah?
I'm not certain.
No, but it is referring to Native American changelings.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
a Cherokee mythology, I think.
Yeah. See,
Mhm. Yeah.
I love the fact that there's a werewolf tribe of Wendigo, but I would rather see a changeling kith of Wendigo. Like
Oh,
like a
yeah.
Native American like we were talking about red caps earlier, and as soon as we were talking about the South American red caps, and then all of a sudden I'm just like, oh, Wendigo show so much should have been a kith.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, I wish the kitsune had been a kith instead of a changing
Yeah.
breed. I mean, talk about, tricksters.
yeah.
Yeah.
The puka-est of the puka.
You mentioned them earlier, the coyotes. They're big time tricksters too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think so that gets into another thing. I think the coyotes being the tricksters is part of why they didn't go the trickster route with the kitsune, because the kitsune aren't really tricksters the way they're presented.
No, not in Japanese mythology. They're not really.
Oh no, they are in Japanese
yeah.
mythology. They're not in
Are
White
they?
Wolf.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Again, not real familiar.
Yeah. But I think in White Wolf they didn't go that route because we filled that niche over here. Then you end up with like a weirdly told kitsune that feels awkward if you love old kitsune stories. So, yeah.
Okay. And if you're wondering what that weird sound is, I've switched up to an e-cig for my smoking needs, because the cigarettes were just, my health is not as good as it could be anyway, and this seems to be helping. And I'm
Awesome.
I'm hoping I can get some better flavors, because this full flavor juice was really nasty. I want to get some. I heard the birthday cake stuff was really good, and that's the upside of e-cigs, is that you can get a whole bunch of different flavors. You're not stuck with just regular or menthol.
Yeah. But, yeah, but also to what you were asking about, indigenous cultures in North America, that was also a really big part of the plot in Wraith. But it goes back to one of those things where it's like they made it a big part of the plot and it closed doors. So I'd love to see sort of a fresh take on native ghost culture in the new Wraith books, where they don't have to totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they don't have to
That would be
retcon.
awesome.
Oh, what?
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean they don't have to retcon the story from Wraith, because
No.
as gut-wrenchingly painful as it is, it's Wraith, and it's talking about a real horrible thing that happened.
Oh,
But
yeah.
not all natives were wiped out, so not all native ghosts would be wiped out, and they would not go quietly into Stygia. I'm just saying.
Well, the whole Trail of Tears, I would think, would trigger a minor maelstrom.
Well, it kind of did. I mean, yeah. And yeah.
Not a major one, but a minor one. And yeah, and there's any time, and somebody mentioned the Holocaust, and that one triggered a minor maelstrom too, I think,
Well,
because it was the nukes that actually triggered the fifth great maelstrom.
it did. I don't remember exactly how they told that, because I know World War One had a great maelstrom. A
Yeah.
maelstrom that basically ran for the entire
That
war.
was the fourth great maelstrom.
Yeah, I have a hard time imagining World War II wouldn't have had the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I mean the scope of death was so much larger. I mean that's why the war the term the war to end all wars is a joke among historians.
Yeah, and it's not just the number of deaths, though. It's the manner of death that causes the maelstrom. It's any time there's something horribly tragic where a whole shitload of people die, that will trigger one.
Yeah,
Like
Because
nuking two
just-
cities.
That it's just the abyss reaching out to pull in as much as it can
yeah.
during that. And what was it? Like I said, it was which maelstrom cracked the foundations of Stygia? Was it the fourth or fifth? It was the one that opened the labyrinth.
Oh, that was fairly early because Karin went
Charon
down
went into the labyrinth to
and brought
fight
back
whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but it was one of the maelstroms that cracked the foundation of Stygia that opened the labyrinth.
yeah, but I know that he went down through that crack and came back with Nudri.
Yeah.
And that was the founding of the Artificers. So that would have been one of the first.
So the second,
Mouse.
maybe?
I think
First
so.
or second, yeah?
It's been a long time since I've looked
Yeah,
at
it's been a while
that
since
plot,
I've read
so.
the book. And it covers it a bit better in Dark Kingdoms.
Mm-hmm.
I do love the fiction that goes along with White Wolf, and I think I like the fiction a bit more than the actual gaming system because they can get a bit more intricate about and it covers a lot of the history better than just reading it in a game manual.
Yeah, I agree. Although I like the game systems that are a bit more narrative. Like, I love the Wraith system because it is more narrative. You have passions and fetters, and it's all built in. And in Mage, you build out your whole view of how magic works, and it interfaces with your stats. Which is going back to what I said earlier about areas where I think White Wolf has done well with multiculturalism, or at least better. I think Mage has a lot of really good examples, especially when looking at
I would
that.
think it would have much better examples than most of the other stuff that has popped up over the years because of the very nature of Mage.
Mm-hmm. And it's flexible. With Vampire, you start out with this setup where like you have clans and bloodlines, and they represent a specific metaphysical thing in the game, so you kind of feel like you need to follow those rules. And then the same with Werewolf, and the same with Changeling. With Wraith and Mage, you're people.
Yes.
You have these political alliances. Great. And those political alliances come with some advantages, and maybe you learn certain things. But really, all the groups in Mage and Wraith can be reduced down to political alliances. And so I think that gave them a lot more maneuvering room when it came to telling more varied and nuanced stories outside of, the cultures that were common.
Yeah. And they cover, at least in Dark Kingdoms, they obliquely cover things like the Dark Kingdom of Ebony, noticing that Stygia is not the only underworld, essentially. They're each of the major cultures have their own. The Jade, the Dark Kingdom of Jade, and so on. But they don't cover them as well, and I don't know that if they ever did books for them, because Wraith was not as well received.
Yeah, they did Dark Kingdom of Jade, and when you read the beginning of Dark Kingdom of Jade, they introduce it as the first book in a line of Dark Kingdoms books.
But they never got around to the rest of them.
I don't think it sold well enough, and so I don't think they produced the rest of them.
Which sucks, because it's a really good system.
It's a really good system. There's the Wraith Curse. There's the great myth of the Wraith Curse.
Yeah.
I also know a lot of Wraith books came up against really brutal timelines, and there was a fair bit of bad luck, and it impacted some of the system editing and playtesting. Of the 5 games, Wraith and Changeling both they
got nerfed pretty badly because of their not selling well.
Yeah. So I personally, like, just my personal opinion, I think Wraith actually has the richest fiction of all the 5 games.
I think so.
It's so rich, but the systems definitely needed a cleanup. I'm so excited about everything I'm seeing from Wraith 20. Those systems are good.
Yeah.
And they've said in the Kickstarter, they said they want to do Dark Kingdoms books. They want to do
better.
That.
I know a bunch of us are going to be very angry if they don't.
Oh, I would throw so much money at those books.
Yes, right? Shut up and take my money.
Yeah.
All
pretty
right,
much.
ladies and gentlemen, we're coming up on our 2-hour mark. I hope that everybody has enjoyed themselves this evening. I want to especially thank Igor for coming in at the last minute.
Amen.
Poor Matt. Please tell him we're hoping that his knee works out and he's going to be okay. And,
Yeah, we hope so too. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really was no problem, you know. It was a pleasure to be here.
and of course, you will be back. You know that, right?
Well, I hope
Hell,
so.
this dude was at our first show, so of course he's going to be back.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invitation once again. All right, it was very good. I got caught up by surprise, but it was nice, you know.
And Victor, it is always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
You cover a lot. You have a much broader understanding of the world of darkness than most of us. And I think I'd like to get you and Jacob. Who's the other fella? Is it Donnie?
We've had Victor and Donnie together before.
No, then it
Yeah.
ain't
Which other
Donnie.
fella are you thinking about?
No, there's another one of us that really does have he's played like all 5 of the systems and is a very eloquent speaker, which is always a plus. So Victor, again, thank you, man. And you will be back.
Thank you.
Because it is way much fun having you. I want to do something with now, which dude was that, Vanessa? Was it Igor or Victor? Vanessa is one of our most recent. She's been on a show now. We finally suckered her into coming on, and that was
Awesome.
I think was that our ladies in gaming night.
Yes, it
Jacob?
was.
Oh.
And she had a lot of very good insights, and I appreciated both her and Jessica for coming on for that show because you can't really talk about women in gaming without actually having women.
It's true.
It's kind of like the basic thing you should have, right?
Right? Exactly.
Talk about that.
And since neither Jacob nor I have that kind of insight, we had to Shanghai some folks.
I am fairly feminine despite the beard. So,
My
but
goodness.
I think I do fall a little shy of the requirements. So,
And I don't know if I've told Victor this, but I have. Did we lose somebody? I just heard somebody drop.
Oh, I think Igor.
all 4 of us are here.
Igor, did we lose you? Yeah, we lost Igor.
Might have lost Igor.
We're trying to get the call back. But anyway, we're coming up on the end. Anywho.
Hello?
Yeah, there you are. Okay, we
hello.
lost you
Yeah.
for a second, man. Sorry about
Yeah.
that. I was going to tell Victor is that when I was I've had a number of gay roommates over the years, and they've been way too much fun to live with in general. And one of I think it was back in my 20s, they decided to take me to the bar for my birthday since I didn't have a date. And it wasn't because they were trying to get me a date. They just wanted me to have fun. And this asshole got me drunk and then signed me up for a flaming contest. And I said, "You're not going to embarrass me." And then I got up there and blew them away.
Did you win?
Yes, I did.
Awesome.
Yes,
Good
I did.
job.
So I'm probably the only straight white man in history that has actually won a flaming contest in a gay bar.
Oh, I really doubt that.
I'm sure you're not the only one.
No, I'm probably not the only one, but I like to think I am.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I've never been homophobic in any way, shape, or form. Mom has always had lesbian and gay friends, and so I learned early on that they're people. They're people. That's all there's to it. There's nothing else different about them. They're people. And that's the way everybody should look at everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're black, red, white, green, purple, whatever. You're people. And that you may have different aspects of how you were brought up in the various cultures, but you're still people. So everybody should think of everybody that way. And if you did, I think this world would be a much better place.
Hear,
especially after what happened in Orlando. I really want folks to just stop being assholes. Just stop being assholes and go about your lives and let everybody else do the same damn thing. Okay?
Yes.
This is a proclamation from the pyramid. Get your shit together, people. Okay? So, I love y'all, and I want to thank you all, and Jacob, of course, my wonderful co-host. Please tell folks if you got anything you need to get off your chest before we go off for the night.
No, that's pretty much everything.
Okay.
Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, Jacob, I wanted to, we still don't know what our next show is going to be on yet. This has kind of gotten to the end of our pre-selected stuff. So we will be posting our next show's topic on the Facebook page for those folks that are listening now and that will be listening to the show later on. If you like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, tell your friends. Please come and join us on our live nights. It is a lot of fun. Vanessa can attest to that, and so can Lexi, because they seem to have way much fun with this. So, all right, guys. Again, thank you very much, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Love y'all.